If I asked you to describe animation in the 2010s in one word, what would you say? Well, there are quite a few options for you. Creative, inspired, some might even call this era a renaissance or golden era. And I can't disagree. Growing up in the 2010s, I got to watch some of the most creative shows in the history of the medium. Adventure Time, Gravity Falls, Infinity Train, regular shows, Steven Universe, and more. I got to witness them shine and blossom into the great shows they became. But what if I told you that all of these shows would probably not exist if it weren't for the contributions of one show, a show you may have forgotten about?
I just broke all my teeth. Wow, what is that? That's not fruit. Oh man, is that a rock? Did I just bite into a rock? That's terrible.
The Flapjack Family Tree describes a particular set of animated cartoons, all stemming from the Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Today, we will be looking at this tree, breaking down each show's influence on one another, the creators' journeys into making these shows, and lots more. So why don't we start with the one that started it all, Flapjack. The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. What the fuck was this show? Flapjack premiered on June 5th, 2008, and ran for 3 seasons all the way until 2010. It aired 46 episodes of 90 segments of some of the strangest animation I have ever witnessed. The art style is very expressive and cartoony, which gives the animators and storyboard artists more freedom to convey more emotion through the art. Some scenes look extremely disturbing, and sometimes the show delved into the realms of stop-motion animation. Scene by scene, you never really knew what you were going to get with the show. In terms of story, it was a very simple premise. It follows Flapjack, a naive young boy who was raised by a whale named Bubble and is mentored by a crusty old pirate named Captain Knuckles. Together, the trio spend their days in Stormalong Harbor, where most of the show takes place. Whilst getting into mishaps on the search for the elusive Candied Island, the show was created by one Thurop Van Orman, who pitched the show as early as 2001. During its run, Flapjack received 2 Primetime Emmy Award nominations, 2 Annie Award nominations, and 1 Golden Reel Award nomination. Nothing to scoff at for a show that had scenes like this.
They drink some of Dr. Barber's tea and fall asleep, and when they wake up, surgery.
So now that we know the show that started it all, let's take a look at the shows that spawned and influenced. Keep in mind, I have not seen every single show on this list, so if I have little to say on a particular show, that's why. Now, let's begin. Adventure Time is the earliest and most easily recognizable show in this tree. Everyone and their mother has talked about how this show is genius, how as they grew up the characters grew up, all things that are very true that add to why the show is considered so legendary. But in this video and with this show, I don't want to repeat what has already been said and extensively covered by other YouTubers. Now that is to say that yes, this show is pretty fantastic. The art style felt fresh for the early 2010s, with varied character designs that helped it stand out. If we're talking about influences from Flapjack, it's very easy to see where the inspiration lied for Pendleton Ward, who was a writer and storyboarder for Flapjack. Both shows share a similar, uncanny, cartoony vibe at times, and both shows involve a fun-loving duo going around getting into fun and lighthearted situations. Not much else I can say about it. W cartoon, finale made me cry. Yeah. In the same year we got Adventure Time, regular show got its debut. I've ranted and raved about the movie on this channel before, check that video out if you haven't. When it comes to influence, it's a bit less noticeable than many of the shows on this list. JG Quintel, who also worked as a writer on Flapjack and Camp Lazlo, was much more inspired by 1980s culture, from video games to rock music, and other cartoons like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, Beavis and Butthead, and Rocko's Modern Life, to name a few. I grew up watching way more of the show than Adventure Time. I remember being so hyped when the movie got released, and when that 8-part finale dropped, that was the stuff of legend. I watched a lot of this show with my older sister as well, and even my brother, who, to give context, is the biggest old head on the planet when it comes to cartoons, has some respect for it. The show's comedy is a perfect example in making children as well as adults laugh at the incredibly zany and cartoony, and the characters were extremely relatable. Even as a little kid, seeing Mordecai and Rigby slacking off reminded me a lot of my childhood friendships. A cult classic for sure. To skip ahead into the year 2012, from the Adventure Time branch of the tree, we got Bravest Warriors, Pendleton's second project he's overseen. I never watched this show. I can definitely see the appeal for it, especially for big fans of his previous show, because from what I've seen they share a lot of qualities, but that's as much as I can say. Next show. 2012, Gravity Falls, Alex Hirsch. What can be said about this show that hasn't really been said already? The mystery, the adventure, great characters, everything just seemed to click for this show. This was probably the first truly continuity-based cartoon that I properly followed as a kid, even though I wasn't allowed to watch it by my parents because it was quote-unquote too scary. It's a fucking kids cartoon. Dipper and Mabel and Grunkle Stan have the same relationship that C. Knuckles and Flapjack had. The twins, both very naive and risk-taking, and Grunkle Stan acting as their guardian, protecting them whenever he can, and showing them around the ropes of Gravity Falls. Now, Gravity Falls, Adventure Time, and regular show all kick off what I'll refer to as the three branches, because a lot of the shows after these ones came from these three, making them arguably the most important shows here, other than Flapjack. Bee and Puppycat is another one of those shows that honestly escaped me for the longest time. To this day, I still haven't watched the original series from 2013, but I have watched most of the series on Netflix, so I guess I can speak about that. It's boring. Actually, wait, let me repeat myself. It's fucking boring. The pacing is so slow and lethargic. It's essentially 22 minutes of nothingness. I don't know how that's even possible. The characters have no character. They're all just NPCs. The main character behaves like an NPC for most of the show. Puppycat is also a pretty annoying character in my opinion. I know that he's supposed to be cute or something, but I'm heartless and that shit doesn't work on me. I will admit I really like the art style, and there are some very pretty moments in the show. The music is also good. I think it fits the show very well, and I would definitely listen to the OST outside of the show, but that's not enough to save it in my opinion. Fuck this show. I wasted way too much time on this shit. Now we get an actually good show. Somewhat. Steven Universe needs no introduction from me. You know the story, you know the fan base, but my personal feelings on the show are somewhat mixed. To me, it seems like everyone either thinks the show is a masterpiece, or the show is absolute garbage. To start with the good, the show looks beautiful. The background designs and sets in the show are amazing. I could look at the backgrounds of this show for hours and not get bored. The music, also iconic. One of the only shows where I have OST songs on my playlist. I even use some of the music in my videos. Now the less good. Without giving any spoilers, there are way too many plot holes in the show. I mean, Garnet's future vision is enough to make my point very clear. The characters also range from pretty enjoyable to annoying or too erratic or constantly changing for my liking. Pearl, I hate Pearl. Narcissistic, arrogant. Her arc in the show sucked ass as well. I don't care if you miss Rose, you are a horrible person. Okay, let me stop rambling. Next show. Over the Garden Wall. I don't remember too much of this show, to be honest. I remember when the show started airing during Halloween, and I remember tuning in every day to keep up with the show. I remember liking it a lot. It was certainly different from what I was used to seeing. It was dark, moody, atmospheric. While it was a miniseries, I still see the show get tons of praise as one of the best things Cartoon Network has ever made. Good for the creators. I'm happy for them. To have a show that only has 6 episodes be praised that highly is a pretty big achievement. Maybe I'll rewatch it and review it someday. Comment if you'd want that. Clarence, in my opinion, is criminally underrated. This show was very hated when it was first airing. For what reason, I have no idea. At its core, Clarence is very similar to Flapjack. You've got a character, or two, in the case of Clarence and Sumo, who essentially do whatever they want, and Jeff acting as the fool to them, keeping them in check. It's a very lighthearted show about 3 childhood friends, and is a perfect example of a simple concept done well. The interactions with different characters have such a childlike charm to them. It's so nostalgic to watch some of these characters just hanging out, getting caught up in adventures, and just being normal kids. I've talked about this show before, and y'all seem to really like it whenever I do, and I am making another review on it soon, so look out for that. One of my favorite shows from this tree, W Show. Returning to the regular show branch of the tree, we have Long Live the Royals, a pilot made by Sean Shelles. Apologies if I butchered that name. It had a total of 4 episodes, including the pilot, and I genuinely do not care about this show at all. The pilot was okay, the animation was a bit subpar, but then again it was just a pilot. I don't really like the art style either. It's like regular show, but watered down somehow. Yeah, very obscure and not much I can say about it. Mighty Magiswords is another show I distinctly remember watching growing up. I must have been around 8 when this show came out, and it lasted surprisingly long too. It only ended in 2019 and had 92 episodes. The show revolves around these 2 siblings, Vamber and Prohyas, being warriors for hire with the use of Magiswords. They are these really cool swords that are based on specific real-world things, and they do specific tasks. It's a cool concept. I would definitely have loved to have one of these as a kid. The stories themselves, very basic. They get given a task to complete, they get into all sorts of trouble, fight a monster or something, and the episode ends. It's not a bad show, but not one I'd have much reason to watch after all these years. The only show from this branch to come out in 2017, OKKO Let's Be Heroes, is another personal favorite for me from this list. The comedy and humor spoke perfectly to me. It was a mixture of slapstick, meta humor, and just random silliness. The main attraction of this show for me is by far the characters. Enid, Rad, and KO are a fantastic trio. Their personalities bounce off each other quite well, and seeing their friendship progress throughout the show was so fun to watch. There were some great character interactions outside of these 3. I mean, you have Mr. Gar and Carol, Professor Venomous and Lord Boxman. Even the secondary characters have great personalities. Even the ones you're not supposed to like have this certain charm to them. This is a W show, no doubt. I'm grouping Hilda and Summer Camp Island together because I've never watched either of them, and I have nothing to say on them. Let's move on. Craig of the Creek is another childhood favorite for me. I adored this show when it first aired. The sense of adventure, the characters, the fact that these kids built a whole community for themselves, where there were different groups of people, different activities. It made you excited to see what part of the creek the show would explore next. Also, one of the only CN shows with a black family at the forefront. Everyone here is an all-star. Primside Cinema would approve. It was actually very diverse, come to think of it. There were people from different races, incomes. There was even some LGBT rep in the show. W for sure. Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart is already considered a cult classic by many. At the time it aired, it was like a breath of fresh air among a sea of shows that were either not good or coming to a close. It had an original concept. Mao Mao, a daring sheriff, and his sidekick Badgerclops have to protect the kingdom of Pure Heart after shattering its protective shield. With the help of Adora Bat, a budding hero, they go on all sorts of adventures. Why on earth CN shoved the show in the dirt is beyond me. We need justice for this show, for real. The Owl House is an interesting case for me. I remember following it when it started airing, and I even finished the first season of the show. I thought it was a pretty good show. Luz as a main character is fun to watch. King is a king, easily the funniest character for the show. Where the show failed was the shipping. It felt a bit too fan servicey for me. I also don't like Amity as well. I feel like her character arc is done way too much in animation these days. I'm not gonna go too deep into this argument because I could make a whole video on this, but to keep it short, that's what I don't like about this show. On top of that, I just generally lost interest past season 1. The last show on this list, Close Enough. I remember watching the first season of the show in a Discord call with some friends. It's crazy to think about now because I was an annoying 13-year-old then, and here I am, a slightly less annoying 15-year-old. Made by JG Quintel and a lot of the same crew from regular show, Close Enough shares a lot of aspects with its predecessor. Quintel voices the main character, the art style is much the same with few modifications. It's basically regular show if they were allowed to do whatever they want. And my god does it work. The show is unhinged in its comedy. The episodes have such a loose way of storytelling, making it very unpredictable. JG Quintel is an all-star. Respect him, man. In conclusion, the Flapjack Family Tree might just be one of the most important things in animation. This one single show gave birth to so many of the great animation from the recent era. Shows that have trailblazed the animation industry probably wouldn't be anything without this one little known show from the late 2000s. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this different video format. I want to try more stuff like this in the future instead of making the same review format over and over again. Click here to see my previous review. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a good day and take care.